Jeg er sikker på en helt vanlig kar på byen, så hadde alle røket på det her.
Beklageligvis.
Sjekk
Yes.
der da, sjekk der da. Okay.
Lady of the Night. This is a film that has an intentionally difficult to read ending.
I was just wondering that the whole point of him, like, because he was dressed up in a dress, but all the guys were treating him like they would sometimes a woman, and they were pawing him and grabbing him and roping him, and it really made you feel, understand how some a woman feels in a male-dominated space.
Yeah, anybody ever worn a nice dress and gone out on the town? Anyone feel like they know what that feels like? You make an interesting point that our protagonist is in this dress. I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, they refer to our protagonist in both the male and female pronouns. I think they do both, so it's a little ambiguous. But it's interesting because this person is just trying to be with their friends, and they keep essentially getting harassed, and at the very end, it's the harasser who says, "I'm fond of you." Like, what's actually happening there, right? What do you guys think?
I really liked the ambiguousness. He didn't ever find out why this person was wearing a dress, and yet there was this aspect of acceptance from his friends, despite the harassment. It seemed like they were all surprised and a little bit excited by this different clothing choice, but he was still included, you know. But I did feel like, as I was watching the film, I felt like if I were that person in that dress being treated that way, I would react strongly. And it's a situation that I don't find myself in often. And so I guess I was able to identify with the character. I mean, even being a gay person and being singled out like that or being harassed like that, we just need to stand up for ourselves. Even in situations where it's all amongst friends, I think it's important for us to remind each other where the boundaries are and what we're comfortable with and what we're not. But assuming that new identity, and the way that the filmmaker never really told us what the context was, I found that really refreshing. I don't always like to know, I don't always like to have a cut and dried narrative, and so that kind of open-ended narrative with a lack of reason for why this person was dressed in a dress, I found that very engaging, and I liked that it was never resolved.
Yeah, there's definitely this thing happening where, like, his friends are kind of treating him like he's one of the guys, but through the lens of the fact that the way he's dressed, the power dynamic has shifted, and the way they interact with him is the physicality in which they interact with him, being one of the guys, has a completely different context. And it suddenly becomes a whole different game. And it ends with this, it's just a joke, wait, I'm hugging you, I'm telling you I'm fond of you. Suddenly something else has happened. And all of that harassment he's been facing all night from his buddy has suddenly just shifted in tone. When you look at it from that perspective, it gets a lot more layered.
This film reminded me very much of my history in athletics, as in a seemingly very straight world, as a gay person. To me, it seemed that the dress afforded the one character in the film who has feelings. It afforded him an opportunity to actually start to express them, particularly in the presence of alcohol. If you notice, the male activity in the film becomes rather erotic. I mean, there's an awful lot of physicality, and I've noticed that in the athletic world. It just seems so similar. I think they went home and did it.
So you touched on something really fascinating.
That's what I think happened, because that's how my life ended up. With all that. I didn't wear a dress. But once there's even an inkling that something could happen,
Felt like the film made me uncomfortable in some ways, but I think that there's something to be said for this slice of life. There's a really heavy dose of realism in that film, and unfortunately, there are still people in the world who will approach people who are different in this way with an attitude of harassment and othering, right? And so I think that it's not so much, I wasn't offended by the film, but I understood that in the context of the film, there were characters who feel differently from one another. And so, I mean, I'm able to accept the narrative as a whole, understanding that there are aspects of it that are very realistic, and that there are people out there who, who do say offensive things and do hurtful things to other people. And I think that that was well represented in the film.
So that's one of the brilliant things, because they show those offensive acts and because we're allowed to recognize
I
them.
totally agree. It's a great film, but disturbing.
Yeah, no, and that's a wonderful that's what we need to hear, because where we get space to see it and go, hey, that actually doesn't seem right, that's the space for this to happen, right? And you make a really good point, gentleman in the awesome red hat, because he's wearing that dress, our hero is wearing this dress, and it allows the other people to treat him differently, and it allows the other gentleman to act in a way that he wouldn't act if the hero wasn't in the dress, and those feelings couldn't be expressed without the dress, but those feelings were always there.